الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Brother Chairman, respected Ustaz, students, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Our topic is entitled The Gold Dinar, Islam and the Future of Money, but somehow it got shifted around. And we would like to begin with the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and with the word of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. The very last revelation to come down in the Quran on the authority of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma and recorded in the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari is a revelation on riba in Surah Al-Baqarah at the end of the surah, 279, 280, 281, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declared war on the money lender. فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا, if you do not give up your demand for riba, the money lender, فَأَذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, then take notice that Allah and His Messenger are going to wage war on you. In that passage of the Quran, we are also given the definition of riba, and it is lending money on interest. Good. Today the money lender has put on a black suit and has a tie. And he's a very respectable member of society now. He's called a bank. And he's doing it openly, in open defiance of Allah and His Messenger. He's lending money on interest. I believe you have banks in Brunei, do you? You do? Okay. And so don't be surprised when Allah and His Messenger wages war. Don't be surprised. This is the very last revelation of the Quran. And it is curious. I think you might want to ask yourself the question, if Allah and His Messenger have warned about war, how come the scholars of Islam are not doing something about this? How come they're not teaching the subject of riba? How come they're not waging a massive, monumental struggle to liberate ourselves from riba? That's a good question to ask. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam said, if you meet a man coming to the market to sell his goods, a truckload of durian. You have durian in Brunei? Yes. And you buy his goods from him before he could enter into the market. So he doesn't know the market price yet. And you buy his goods from him. And when he enters the market, then he finds out he could have gotten a better price in the market. So you exploited his ignorance of the market price. The Americans have a nice phrase for it. You ripped him off. That expression has come to Brunei? familiar with rip-off? Good. So we can carry on with the lecture. Any transaction based on deception, in which you rip off people, is also riba, said the Prophet. If you meet a man coming to the market to sell his goods, and you buy his goods from him before he could enter the market, and when he enters the market he finds he could have gotten a better price, that, said the Prophet, is riba. So we have two kinds of riba. One in the Quran, which is money lending, and the other in the Hadith, which is supported by the Quran, a transaction based on deception, which delivers a gain, an advantage, a profit to which one is not justly entitled. Having said that, we now turn to our subject on the future of money. And this is a strange lecture. Why? Because if you're lecturing on monetary economics, you're not supposed to be dressed like this. You're not supposed to have a beard. Huh? If you're lecturing on monetary economics, how come you dress like this? We're not accustomed to this. And that is part of our problem today. Because those of us who study in Jamiatul Azhar and study in the Darul Ulum, the Faculty of Islamic Studies, etc., etc., and we graduate with knowledge of tafsir and hadith and fiqh, we don't ever study international monetary economics. No. It is my good fortune that I had a teacher who was a wise man. He established an Institute of Islamic Studies in Pakistan, and I was a student at Al-Azhar in Egypt, and I left Al-Azhar to come and study with him. That's the best decision I've ever made in my life. To go and study with him, Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari Rahimahullah. And because I studied with him, I was introduced to philosophy, to politics, to economics, to the philosophy of history, to the philosophy of science. Where does a student get that chance today? And I then went on to study international monetary economics in 2 universities. So I'm not a stranger to the subject. I have 1,000 Bruneian, is it Bruneian or Bruneian? Bruneian. I have 1,000 Bruneian dollars in my account. And the bank gave me a checkbook so I could write checks. And I wrote out checks for 50,000 Bruneian dollars. And all the shops I went to and I paid the checks, they all happily accepted the checks. Huh? Is that fraud? It is. They should send me to jail. Isn't it? Come on, tell me. All that I have is 1,000, but I write out checks for 50,000. Is that right? No. No? Well, that's called fractional reserve banking. It's not an honorable thing. Fractional reserve banking is so nasty it stinks. Yes, it stinks. And when they have to stand before Allah on Judgment Day, there's no lawyer in the world they can use to get off. Because if you have $1,000, you cannot write checks for 50,000. So I've introduced you to fractional reserve banking. Someone deposits into the bank 1,000 and the bank will now lend 50,000 for that 1,000 or 30,000, whatever it is. In the Quran, Allah says, وَأَلَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. The translation will be, and mankind is not entitled to anything except that for which they strive to make an effort. But there's a nicer way to translate it. If you don't plant, you cannot reap. Good. So if I am reaping without planting, which is what the bank is doing, they created $49,000 worth out of thin air. If I am reaping without planting, and Allah says you can't do that, you cannot do that. You cannot reap if you do not plant. But I am reaping without planting. What's the explanation? Answer, I am reaping what others are planting. I am living off the sweat of others. That's the world today because of banking. There are those in the rich countries of the world, the European countries in particular, who are living very well, thank you. They're living very well, thank you. Oh yes. But they're drinking the blood of others. They're living off the sweat of others. It's the biggest rip-off since Adam alayhi salam set foot on earth. And those who engage in this fractional reserve banking, and those who defend it, and those who support it, on Judgment Day will pay a terrible price for it, and they deserve to pay that price. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran on 3 occasions, وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ. Do not make little, do not diminish the value of people's property, people's wage, whatever they possess. Do not diminish it. Do not make it small. وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ. In the Quran, there is money, but we sometimes never read the Quran and study it in this way. In the Quran, we don't have $1,000 to put in my account. Remember I told you I have $1,000 in the account? So now we're going to look at the $1,000 in a different perspective. That was the bank. And they were writing out checks for 50,000. That's bad, that's haram, that stinks. But now let's look at the 1,000. How valid is this $1,000? Or 1,000 ringgits? Or 1,000 rupiah? In the Quran, Allah speaks of money. In Surah Ali Imran, there is the word dinar. I don't have time, so I can't quote the verse. In Surah Yusuf, there's the word dirham in the plural. I have a question to ask. When Allah speaks of a dinar in the Quran, is it a paper dinar? What do you think? If you think it's a paper dinar, you should buy a one-way ticket to the moon. Yeah? What's that? The dinar in the Quran is a gold coin. Everybody knows that. And the dirham in the Quran is a silver coin. But this 1,000 that I have in my account is not gold, it's not silver. Okay. Now here's a little test for you. Bilal, radiallahu ta'ala, came to the Prophet and offered him some dates. Now, if you have attended my lecture before, or if you visited me on YouTube, he came and he offered some dates. The Prophet ﷺ looked at the dates and he said, Bilal, these are very fine quality dates. Where did you get them? Bilal said, O Messenger of Allah, I had 2 sa'. So let's use the word kilogram. May I? I had 2 kilograms of inferior quality dates. And these were worth maybe 10 ringgits each. And I exchanged them for 1 kilogram of superior quality dates. And this was worth about 20 ringgit. You have studied maths, haven't you? So I expect you will agree with me. Now, the value of the 2 kilograms was similar to the value of the 1 kilogram. Because you tell me you've done maths already. Bilal, said the Prophet, this is the essence of riba. Oh my gosh. War from Allah. But more than that. Nabi Muhammad was cursed. He cursed all 4. And he said they're all equally guilty. Who are the 4? The one who takes riba. The one who gives riba. The one who records the transaction. And the 2 witnesses. They're all equally guilty. So if you're working in a bank, you might want to change your job now. Number 2. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, if you consume even 1 dirham of riba, it is equivalent to committing zina 36 times. Number 3, he said that riba, and all of these ahadith you'll find in my book, which is there, the prohibition of riba in the Quran and Sunnah. He said, riba is comprised of 70 different parts. 70. The smallest part, have you had your lunch already? I don't want to spoil your digestion with this hadith. He said the smallest part of riba is equivalent to a man marrying his own mother. That's terrible. Bilal, this is the essence of riba. What did he do? All that he did was to exchange 2 kilograms of inferior quality dates for 1 kilogram of superior quality. And the value was the same. This was 20 ringgit, 20 ringgit. Bilal, this is the essence of riba. What you should have done was to sell the 2 kilograms and get the 20 ringgits and use that to buy the 1 kilogram. But a direct exchange of dates for dates, which was an unequal exchange, 2 on this side, 1 on this side, was haram, was riba. Why? 100 years ago, any school child would have answered that. 100 years later, not even the Darul Uloom can answer it. That's where we are today. That's where we are today. I lectured at Darul Uloom Zakaria in Johannesburg. The principal, the entire staff, and 700 students present. Nobody can answer the question. Nobody. The answer to the question, why was it haram and riba to have an unequal exchange of dates, is located in the definition of money in Islam. What is money in Islam? The other hadith answers the question. The Prophet said, Sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, and he is going to be so pleased, Nabi Muhammad alayhi sallam, if you will devote attention to studying the subject and go and teach it. You get plenty blessings for that. He said, if you have a transaction in which there is an exchange of gold for gold, or silver for silver, not gold for silver, gold for gold, or silver for silver, or wheat for wheat, or barley for barley, or dates for dates like the one with Bilal, or salt for salt. It must be equal for equal. It must be hand to hand, meaning must be a spot transaction, not a credit transaction. Other than that, it would be riba. From this hadith, we know first of all that what was common to all 6, gold, silver, wheat, barley, dates and salt, is that they were all used as money in the market. So if there was a shortage of dinar and dirham in Medina, what would they use as money? Huh? Medina, what does Medina have? Durian? Come on. Huh? Dates, don't be afraid to answer me. Dates, Medina has lots of dates. So that's the first definition of money in Islam. Money is either precious metals or commodities of food consumption which are in abundant supply in the market and which have a shelf life. Not like mangoes. You use mangoes as money, your money is going to start to rot then. No. So now we know why he said this is riba. Because dates were used as money. And if I have superior quality dates, and I exchange 1 kilogram for your 2, tomorrow I can do something else. I can exchange 1 kilogram of superior for 2 kilograms of superior. And I give you time to give me the 2 kilograms. Can you see the money lender there? Have you seen him? You not seen him? I am lending you 1 kilogram of superior quality dates. And you will return to me 2 kilograms of superior quality dates. That's a loan on 100% interest, isn't it? Not even the credit card charge that. This is why the Prophet said haram. Because if you have an unequal exchange of dates, you will open the door for the money lender to lend money on interest. But Umar radiallahu ta'ala exchanged 1 camel for 4. But that was not haram, that was not riba. Why? Because animals were not used as money. So now we have the definition of money in Islam, as I just mentioned. Money in Islam is either precious metals, or when precious metals are in short supply, commodities of food consumption, which are in abundant supply in the market and which have a shelf life. Number 2, what is common to all 6 is that the value of the money is inside the money, not in a sitting room where George Soros is sitting. No. The value of the money is in the money, not with some people sitting down in Singapore, Hong Kong, or New York. No. In other words, money in Islam has intrinsic value. Okay. Number 3, the value of the money is created by Allah. He alone is Ar-Razaq, not the central bank. The value of the wheat can fluctuate based on demand and supply. But that value is determined by the market and not by an individual sitting down in his room and deciding what to do with money. No. So there we are, money in Islam. Question, and remember what I said. Question, if we are in the Indonesian island of Java, if you know the answer, put your hands up. And we want to bring back this money which is in the Quran and which is in the Sunnah. Sunnah money. And we have a shortage of gold and silver coins. What would we use as money? Come on. Yes? Rice. Correct. But not nasi. Nasi is a cooked rice. Huh? So what's the other rice? Karas, yeah. Karas. So it's not nasi kandar. Good. So if we are in Java, in Indonesia, and we have a shortage of gold and silver, we would use rice as money. Why? Number 1, rice is an article of food consumption. Number 2, rice is abundant supply in Java. Number 3, rice has a shelf life. Yeah. Okay, one more question. If you're in the island of Cuba, my neighbor, I'm from Trinidad, the Caribbean. The northernmost island is Cuba next to America. And the southernmost is my island of Trinidad, which is just off the coast of Venezuela, which is why we have Spanish as a second language in our schools. So, we're in Cuba. I remember Fidel Castro doesn't smoke anymore. So don't tell me tobacco. And we want to bring back the Sunnah money. We have a shortage of gold and silver. What would we use as money? If you have listened to my lecture or visited me on YouTube, yes. Sugar is correct. A very bright class here. Sugar is correct. sugar is an article of food consumption. Sugar is an abundant supply in Cuba. Sugar has a shelf life. So this is money in Islam. So what about the $1,000 that I have in the account? Is that money according to Islam?
No.
Where did it come? It's a piece of paper. It has a picture on it. And it has a number on it. Where did it come from? Answer. In Surah Al-Ma'idah. Oh no, before I do that, a lesson for you in Usul al-Tafsir, the methodology for the study of the Quran, Usul al-Tafsir. At the beginning of the Quran, Allah teaches a lesson. So you've got to be sharp now to check, grasp the lesson. He ordered the angels, the malaika, to make sajda to Adam alayhi salam. فَسَجَدُوا, they all made sajda, illa Iblis, except Satan, Iblis. If we use the wrong methodology, which is to study this verse by itself, in isolation, the Americans say standalone, then we'll come to the conclusion Iblis was an angel. Because the order was given to the angels. Okay? And we went and told all the neighbors Iblis was an angel. And then we went on to read the Quran and to study the Quran, and then we found, oh my gosh, seems to have made a mistake. Because the rest of the Quran tells me angels don't have free will. Angels have to do what they are ordered to do. They don't have any choice. So don't call your wife an angel. Eh? But Iblis disobeyed. Iblis had a free will. So he could not be an angel. So now I'm becoming embarrassed because I told all the neighbors Iblis is an angel. And then when I studied the Quran further, to cut it short now, in Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran, you say Surah Al-Kahf, Allah said, وَكَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ. See? So this is the wrong methodology, to take a verse by itself in isolation. The correct methodology is to go to the whole Quran. Take all the verses pertaining to the subject, bring them together and get the meaning from them, and then come to conclusion. So now, to Surah Al-Ma'idah. Before we attempt to answer, where did this paper come from? With the picture and the number. The 1,000 that put in the bank. In Surah Al-Ma'idah of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a very stern command. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have faith in Allah, La tattakhidhu al-yahuda wal-nasara awliya. Do not take the Jews and do not take the Christians as your friends and allies. Everybody knows that verse. Everybody. Don't tell me you don't know it. Is Allah talking about all Christians and all Jews? Wrong methodology to say he's talking about all Christians and all Jews. Why? Because when we go to the rest of the Quran, there are so many verses. So many verses that will not be in conflict with that. And I don't have the time to quote them all. So Allah is not talking about all Christians. And He's not talking about all Jews. Well then, which Christians and which Jews is Allah speaking about in this blessed book? That's the question. And the answer is right there in the words which follow. Ba'aduhum awliya'u ba'd. Meaning, the Quran is anticipating a time which is to come, when the animosity and the hatred and the conflict between Christians and Jews will experience a mysterious change. There will be a mysterious reconciliation, and a Christian-Jewish friendship and alliance will emerge. When that happens, Allah is saying in this Quran, we now understand, because of the proper methodology that we are using, do not take such Christians and do not take such Jews as your friends and allies, who themselves are friends and allies of each other. Allah is not talking about a Christian man being friendly with his Jewish neighbor. No. Not about individuals. He's talking about an alliance with two communities. That's what he's talking about. When that Christian-Jewish alliance emerges in history, do not take them as your friends and allies. وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُمْ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. If you become their friends and allies, you will lose your Islam. If you become their friends and allies, you become a part of them. وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُمْ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Surely Allah does not guide the wicked people. So that Jewish-Christian alliance is going to be a wicked alliance. Has that Jewish-Christian alliance emerged? When last have you visited the Vatican? Huh? The Vatican has played a critical role, because the Vatican exonerated, that's a big English word. The Vatican said that the Jews as a community are not responsible for the crucifixion of God, meaning Jesus. Oh, but nobody ever said that. The present Pope Benedict just wrote a book in which he's arguing that the Jews as a community are not to be held responsible for the crucifixion. Oh, but Mr. Pope, we're not saying that. The Quran tells us, فَآمَنَ الطَّائِفَةُ مِنْ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ وَكَفَرَ الطَّائِفَةُ. There were some Jews who accepted Jesus. Yeah. So when a Jew accepted Jesus, did he cease to be a Jew? Come on, Pope, let me get an answer from you. When a Jew accepted Jesus, did he cease to be a Jew? So nobody ever said that all the Jews are responsible. Come on, Pope, wake up. But the Vatican did it. And most people now in the Western world accept that the Jews are not responsible for the crucifixion. Therefore, there is no need for this enmity and conflict and hatred. And so now you have a Jewish-Christian alliance. But there is a common element in this. On this side is Zionism. And on this side is Zionism. So it is a Zionist Judeo-Christian alliance. What I have news to you. These are the people who today rule the world. These are the people who are serving Dajjal. And when you submit to them, you become their friends and allies. The Quran is saying you lost your Islam. Don't believe me? Wait until you go in your grave. Don't believe me? Wait until you go in your grave. Shall I repeat it a third time? These are the people who are waging war on Islam on behalf of the state of Israel. And these are the people who met in upstate New York in 1944 and took control of a conference called the Bretton Woods Conference, out of which emerged the Bretton Woods Accord. You see why you need international monetary economics. And from the Bretton Woods Accord emerged the International Monetary Fund. And in the International Monetary Fund, they put in something so small, you need a microscope to find it. In the whole big document, they choose one little article, and inside of the article they slipped it in a few words, and probably even used small type so you wouldn't see it. What is it? Even Dr. Muhammad Mahathir was not aware it was it. That it is prohibited to use gold as money. Oh, but I worship Allah, not you. And the Allah who I worship and the Nabi who I follow, they have given me gold as money. So who are you to tell me gold is haram? If I submit to that, I'm committing shirk. Because I'm not worshipping Allah anymore, I'm worshipping you. And that's what they did. They first, of course, colonized the world. You could not have had this without colonization. And they never decolonized until they took the gold and silver out of the market with money and replaced it with paper. And then they held a conference in New York, and then they established the International Monetary Fund, which prohibited the use of gold as money. And so now we have, for the first time in human history, something called an international monetary system. That branch of knowledge never existed. No. That branch of knowledge only came into existence when the substitute came, the paper. The paper, of course, started with the Bank of England. 1716, 1907, or somewhere around there. But in September of 1971, when I think most of you were not born, September of 1971, something happened to the International Monetary Fund's Articles of Agreement. Something happened to the Bretton Woods Accord. What is it? The substitute of the paper money now had laws governing it. That you have now the US dollar, the French franc, the German mark, the Russian ruble, the Indonesian rupiah, the Malaysian ringgit, the Bruneian dollar. So you have a whole world of paper currency, and you need a system to regulate it. At Bretton Woods, they took this decision that the paper would be redeemable in gold for only one currency, only the US dollar, and would be redeemable in gold at $35 an ounce. $35 an ounce. And all the rest of the world of paper would not be redeemable in gold. No, sir. So the US dollar is now His Majesty, the US dollar. The rest of the world of paper money would have their value determined on the basis of their relationship with the US dollar. So if you want to know what is the value of the ringgit, well, the value of the ringgit is 3.8 to the dollar. That's the value of the ringgit. Only the dollar is redeemable in gold at $35 an ounce. So if you take $35 an ounce to Washington, $35, and you say, Uncle Sam, give me my gold, he has to give you 1 ounce of gold. International law. So this system is 99% haram. What about the French franc? What about the German mark? What about the rupee? None of these can be redeemed in gold. Only one. But then it's not only this. When I go with my $35 to Washington to get my ounce of gold, the Britain was of God said, you have to be a central bank. Only a central bank can bring US dollars to be redeemed in gold. But we are using the money in the market, not only the central bank. So now it is 99.9% haram. Only a 0.1% is valid. What is that? That any government could take their US dollars to Washington and demand that it be redeemed for gold at what rate? $35 an ounce. In 1971, there was a very wise ruler in France. His name was Charles de Gaulle. And he understood that this monetary system was bogus, was fraudulent, was haram, and that it was ripping off the rest of mankind and giving an unfair advantage to the United States. And there was a leader here in Southeast Asia who came to the same conclusion. What is his name? Mahathir. Dr. Muhammad Mahathir, yes. And this man called Muhammad Mahathir seems as though he didn't have a backbone made of recycled paper. No. He had the courage. It seemed as though the backbone was made of steel. He had a very rare commodity in the world today. He has something called courage. Courage. And because you are young, ask Allah to give you backbones made of steel, so you also will be courageous in standing up for Allah. So that Charles de Gaulle addressed the French Parliament on the subject that this monetary system is bogus. It gives an unfair advantage to the United States. And then instructed the French Central Bank to redeem US dollars to gold. So Friday afternoon, the central bank came in, the French Central Bank came in with 3 billion US dollars. Uncle Sam, are you there? Give us the gold. Under the law, you have to give us the gold. Richard Nixon retired to Camp David and quickly realized that the game was up, because they had printed more paper than they had gold. If I have 1 million ounces of gold, I am not allowed to print more than 35 million US dollars. But they had printed thousands of times more than that. So the game was up. If they paid the gold to France, then Saudi Arabia won the gold as well, and Kuwait. So Richard Nixon declared, we gave our word, but we don't have to keep it. So then toe up. The records are gone. So the 0.1% which was halal disappeared. I had to take you on this long road to answer the question. That 1,000 in my account, where did it come from? How valid is it? Since September 1971, and no one will challenge me on this. Since September 1971, all that they have to do to produce money is to have paper and a printing press. That's all. If you have paper, ink, and a printing press, and you print it, you say abracadabra, and you have money. You have money. So wait a minute. If you print a piece, you take a piece of paper and print a picture on it and put a number on it and then assign to that piece of paper an entirely fictitious value. You're playing God. Only Allah creates wealth from nothing. This is shirk. And whoever used that paper that you printed now join in the shirk. So maybe now we can understand the hadith which is Sahih Bukhari. Repeated 4 times. Where? In Sahih Bukhari, 4 times. That 999 out of every 1,000 will enter into the hellfire. This is why I'm happy you had your lunch before coming. 999 out of every 1,000 in the hellfire. Why? Because there's one sin that Allah has said in advance He is not going to forgive. And it is shirk. And so the 1,000 that I have in the account, they call it fiat money. I don't particularly like fiat. I prefer Volkswagen. Huh? I don't know why you choose. You could choose Toyota. Huh? Fiat always shutting down all over the road. And they call it fiat money. The proper term that they should have used is bogus money. Yeah. Bogus money would be a more appropriate term. Now I have a secret to tell you. Don't tell everybody yet. I told this secret at the conference, the International Islamic Conference that we just had. But I forgot to smile when I was telling the secret. So all the Islamic scholars present there thought that I was serious. So after the conference I asked them, how come you didn't laugh at my joke? So which joke? I think the Islamic scholars. So I said, when they print the paper, the Judeo-Christian Zionist Alliance and those who support them, when they print their paper, the US dollar, the French franc, the British sterling pound, the German mark, the Singaporean dollar, they have a secret chemical. And they dip the paper in the chemical. And it comes out as hard currency. Can you believe it? None of the Islamic scholars smiled. None of them laughed. Nobody. They believed I was speaking the truth. They have a secret chemical. It comes out as hard currency. And we don't have the secret chemical. So when we dip it, ours don't come out as hard currency. So now what's the implication? When they dip it in the chemical, you could use a US dollar anywhere in the world. You could even use it in Bangladesh. Anywhere in the world they could use it. Okay? So anything they want in the world, they can buy for free. Did you hear? Since September 1971. Anything they want anywhere in the world, all the oil of Saudi Arabia, they can buy it for free. All you have to do is to have paper, ink, and a printing press. And when we want to follow them in the shirk, and we also print Guess what happens? Remember, we don't have the secret chemical. So I take a suitcase filled with Bangladeshi taka. And I went to New York to Manhattan, Midtown Manhattan. And I want to buy a cup of coffee. I cannot buy a cup of coffee with a whole suitcase filled with Bangladeshi money. That's not fair. If they keep on doing that, Indonesia is going to become poor, destitute. And they're my daughters, who now have to work as slaves in Singapore. If they continue doing that, Bangladesh is going to become poor. And the Bangladeshi worker will have to work for a slave wage. Because they are slaves now in Dubai. If they keep on doing that, they're going to reduce all of us to slavery while they remain rich. If they continue, what will Allah do to an ummah which is so blind? If you want to know the answer, wait until you go in your grave. What do? This is unjust. This is riba. وَلَا تَبْخَسُ النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ. What did it do? Answer is, when you recognize that you have abandoned the Quran, when you recognize that you have abandoned the Sunnah, you make tawbah. You make istighfar, and you seek to recover the Sunnah. The Sunnah is the golden hour. The Sunnah is the silver dirham. Maybe you can't pay for tetarik. You have tetarik here? If you want to buy tetarik, maybe a silver dirham would be too much. So it's possible. The experts will have to decide. Maybe we can mint coins of a lesser value, from maybe copper or something, for buying tetarik. Because if I have 1 dirham, it might buy 25 cups of tetarik. I can't win 25 cups. So here we are. Here we are. And these are dirhams minted by a firm in Brunei. And I have looked at several of the dirhams minted now in different parts of the world, including non-Muslims who are minting. Chinese in, what's the name of that town now? Penang. A Chinese firm in Penang is minting dinar and dirham. And I have looked at them all, and this is the most beautiful I found. So after the lecture, you can come and take a look. This is 3 dirhams. This is 2 dirhams, and this is 1 dirham. Dirham is a silver coin. The dinar would be a gold coin. And alhamdulillah, I've been lecturing on this subject for 15 years now. And most of the time it was the boys crying in the wilderness. But thanks to Dr. Muhammad Mahathir, at least this part of the world is waking up now, thanks to him. But we still have a problem with the Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund. We can mint the dinar or dirham, but we can't use it as money. So what we're doing now is, we're saying, well, pay your zakat, because you can't pay your zakat in that book as money. When you marry, give your mahar in dinar. You're going to perform the hajj, make sure you pay for your hajj in this money, not in that. When you give sadaqah, make sure you give your sadaqah in this, if you want to get barakah from Allah. So we are using the dinar and dirham now for fulfilling religious obligations. But that's not enough. That's not enough. The US dollar is going to collapse tomorrow. I knew this 15 years ago. Anybody who's been following me would know that Imran Hosein has been saying for 15 years now the US dollar is going to collapse. It must collapse. How did I know that? I'm not a prophet. I don't have an angel whispering in my ear. I don't have a jinn whispering in this ear. No. It's proper methodology for studying the Quran and the Hadith. Proper methodology. And because I entered into the field of Ilmu Akhiru Zaman, or Islamic eschatology. So 15 years ago I knew that the US dollar is going to collapse. It's collapsing now. 2 years ago I realized that this Judeo-Christian alliance, Zionist alliance, is going to bring back gold and silver as money. That's coming, maybe 20 years from now. I realized this 2 years ago. I prayed to Allah, take me away from the world. I do not want to be alive on that day. When the kuffar bring back the dinar and dirham, and we Muslims still have not done it, the disgrace will be too great for me. I don't want to be alive to see that day. But oh Allah, keep them alive. Those Islamic scholars who do nothing, say nothing, speak nothing, and defend the paper money as halal, keep them alive. They make no effort to bring back the dinar and dirham. So keep them alive. So on that day when the kuffar bring back dinar and dirham, they will face the disgrace. But put me in my grave. I don't want to see it. Well then what should we do? The answer is we have to defy the kuffar. We don't worship them. We worship Allah. But we have to defy them with wisdom, not like a reckless driver. So my suggestion is, and now we'll end the lecture, my suggestion is, and you have a better chance in Brunei than elsewhere, to build, to establish micro markets in the countryside. And in those micro markets you bring back dinar and dirham and do not allow any other money to be used there. And as the people become familiar with the use of dinar and dirham in the markets, you replicate those markets in the countryside until eventually Allah has blessed you with a sultan who loves the religion, who is sincere. You're lucky. The sultan will then choose the correct timing. And the sultan will then, with courage, announce, from now on, in Brunei, we're using dinar and dirham as money. When he makes that announcement, the whole world of Islam is going to turn to Brunei and say, Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. I pray that that day, inshallah, may come. ربنا تقبل منا انك انت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا انك انت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا ارحم الراحمين. On to the question. These 4 books of mine contain my Islamic eschatology. The most important one of all is Jerusalem in the Quran. This is Bahasa. The Bahasa book is twice the size of the English book. So you say Quran. Jerusalem di dalam Al-Quran. This is the textbook of Islamic eschatology. And then the next one is an Islamic view of Gog and Magog in the modern world. The third one is Surah Al-Kahfi of the Quran, which is the most important surah of the Quran, and this book is on Surah Al-Kahfi and the modern age. This one, the gold, dinar and silver, dirham, Islam and the future of money, locates the subject of money in the context of Quran. These are not to say, when I get back to Malaysia, I intend to ship 10 copies of each, inshallah, and see whether it comes through. And if it does, well then we can ship a larger consignment, inshallah. If you create wealth out of nothing, that's haram. Progress of fraudulent and haram. And so printing a piece of paper and putting a picture and a number and giving an entirely fictitious value to it is haram. ولا تبخسوا الناس أشياءهم. That paper rips off people. If you're buying their things for nothing. Nothing. For more than that. That paper is vulnerable to attacks. As Dr. Mahathir realized. And if they attack the paper and it loses value, the result is something called inflation. Inflation. Inflation is not rising prices. No. Inflation is the falling value of money. And when you have inflation, the cure for inflation is gold. Gold. Argentina had runaway inflation for 20 years ago. And Argentina brought gold coins in the market and solved the problem of inflation. Serbia had runaway inflation of the former Yugoslavia. And Serbia brought gold coins into the market and cured inflation. But the IMF prohibits you from using gold as money. When the value of your money falls, you are working, you are getting a salary, and with your salary you could buy a camel. And then the value of the money fell, same work you're doing, same salary you're getting, but now you can't buy a camel anymore, you can only buy a donkey. You're suffering loss. What you don't know is that your loss is somebody else's gain. And so there's a massive and fraudulent transfer of wealth through this paper. Electronic money is even more classier than paper money. Because with electronic money, you don't need any paper, you don't need ink, you don't need any printed press, you don't need, all you need is a keyboard, you type it in and you type it out. That's electronic money. Equally haram, except that the electronic money is more dangerous because it can now be used as an instrument of spying. They know how much money you have, they know how you're using it, they know where you're using it, they know when you're using it. And if you're on the wrong side of the fence, you can attack anytime you want. You can't take your money out of the bank. So both the paper money and the electronic money are both haram. And all transactions involving the use of paper and electronic money are haram, all. Which is why 999 of every 100 are going into the hellfire. A credit card involves the use of haram money. Okay? But in a credit card you have something else. When you have a credit card, you're using somebody else's money, not yours. And he is lending you the money on a condition. That condition is haram. That you can use his money, not your money. And there is no charge for it. It's very generous. On the condition that you must repay him by the end of the month. And if you don't, you agree to pay interest. How can you agree to that condition? If the condition was that at the end of the month, if you do not pay, you're going to have to drink a glass of whiskey, would you agree to that? Come on, answer me.
No.
No. But the whiskey is not as evil as the riba. Huh? So the agreement is haram. I was lecturing to a group of 200 university students in Philadelphia, some years ago, and the subject of credit cards came up. I said, all those who have a credit card, put your hands up. Everybody put their hands. You cannot agree to that condition. So it's better to use a debit card, and the debit card would be for dinar. And there are many more questions. Well, about 10 years ago, I conducted a seminar on Islam and money at the International Islamic University in Malaysia. And Bank Islam in Malaysia opposed my seminar, went all the way. 10 years later, I went to give a lecture for 2 months ago in a place called Kajang. And when I went there, I found, to my surprise, that the lecture was sponsored in part by Bank Islam. I said, what? This is good news. I thought I was the enemy. And more than that, the CEO of Bank Islam was present. He was the former deputy governor of the Bank Negara, Malaysia. And more than that, after the lecture was over, we sat down for dinner, and the CEO was sitting next to me. And they confessed that they knew that some of the things that they were doing were haram. And what they're doing now is they're searching for a way out, because the cat is out of the bag. Your so-called murabaha transaction is not halal. No. It is, in fact, riba through the back door. I just attended a conference on riba in Malaysia in July. And one of the former CEOs of an Islamic banking system came and addressed the conference. And he said, you think it's only murabaha? And then he started to describe for us all the different things which were being done, which he said were all bogus. And I was surprised because I didn't know all of that. So what we have to do is to continue our effort of pointing out that this is wrong. But more than that, since they are searching for a way to get out of the fix in which they are, we should try to reach out to them and help them to get out of the fix in which they are. Okay? I don't have the time to explain to you why murabaha is haram.
We'll take one more question.
What is the solution for a common man, like every one of us, but after knowing this fact and all these things, after realizing this, if we want to stop this, so what we should do?
There's a hadith in which the Prophet said, and I'm surprised that the non-Muslims are following the Prophet's knowledge. The hadith is, the Prophet said, if you have land, hold on to your land. And if you have animals, hold on to your animals. And a man asked, O Messenger of Allah, and what if we do not have land and animals? He said, sharpen your sword. At this time when the US dollar is about to collapse, it's not a matter of if it will collapse, it's a matter of when it will collapse. In fact, it should have collapsed already. It's now in a place called ICU. They're keeping it alive with an artificial pump. I think they're waiting for some big event like a war, like an attack on Pakistan nuclear plants or so. So then pull the trigger and let the dollar collapse. When it collapses, it has already substantially collapsed from $35 an ounce, it's now over $1,700 per ounce. When it does collapse, my thinking is that they're going to demonetize the US dollar, meaning you can't use it, no longer legal tender. You can't use it for buying and selling. And they'll give you a certain time frame in which to bring your dollars to be exchanged for a new money, which will have a fraction of the value of the old one. In this way, they'll be able to liquidate a lot of their debts. But in the process, white America is going to lose its wealth. Black America is not rich. But white America has guns. The United States is the one country in the world where anybody can buy a gun. And no limit in the number of guns you can buy in the United States. And so there's going to be chaos in the United States. Chaos, anarchy, and they're preparing for it. They know it's coming. But in addition to that, all those countries which don't have the chemical, in those countries there's going to be panic. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. There's going to be panic. Because people are going to see, you buy a loaf of bread in the morning, and you pay this much, and by the evening it's twice the price. Runaway inflation. As people start dumping their paper money. Dumping it. The first thing to disappear will be food. Everybody buying food with the money. So it will be a good thing if you have money to convert it to dinar and dirham. Okay? Which all the rich people are already doing. China is the biggest buyer of gold now. In the United States, you have advertisements on the television that will buy your gold for anything you want. Yeah? They want to buy all the gold that they can because they know the paper is on its way up. The government of Argentina, about last week I think, threatened to enact legislation to prevent foreigners from buying land because they were doing what the Prophet said. If you have land, hold on to your land. So people who have money today are investing their money in land. And Argentina is a place with a lot of farmland. Okay? It is to stop this that the Argentine government wants to enact legislation. My understanding is perhaps the guidance for us comes out of Surah Al-Kahfi. The young men fled the city and they went to a cave. Remember? وَإِذْ اعْتَزَلْتُمُوهُمْ وَمَا يَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا اللَّهَ فَأْوُوا إِلَى الْكَهْفِ يَنْشُرْ لَكُمْ رَبُّكُمْ بِرَحْمَتِهِ إِلَى آخِرِ الْآيَةِ. I say the cave for us today is Kampung. Kampung. All of the world is witnessing movement from the villages to the city for the first time in history. And we now have mega cities. That's exactly what the Dajjal wants. That's precisely what he wants. So we move in the opposite direction. They're moving to the city, we move into Kampung. And in Kampung we're small, we don't want to be big. And we build a Kampung in which we live the way of life of Islam. We must have food. Don't depend on the supermarket. No. We must produce our own food. And the food must not be genetically modified. No. The milk must not have hormone injections in the animals, the meat. You keep on doing that, you know what's going to happen to your baby boys? As they start drinking that milk and eating that meat, and your baby girls tomorrow will have bed. Yeah. So, we produce our own food, we are self-sufficient. If you don't have dinars and dirhams, you're not allowed to use it, they're coming after you. You can still survive because you have food. That is why he said, if you have land, hold on to your land. If you have animals, hold on to your animals. Because your land and your animals will be more valuable than your dinar and dirham. So most of the countryside, small communities, and establish Islam in the community. I call that the Muslim country. And have a market, and in that market you use only sunnah money. If you don't have dinars and dirhams, then you can use rice, you can use
Thank you, Brother Sheikh. I hope the session today enlightened us on the function and future of money, the aspects and opportunities of using for the life. Before we end, I'd like to invite the organizer to give a token of appreciation to Sheikh Imran. Again, I would like to invite the stakeholders.